Well, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our opening ceremony is about to begin. Please have a nice seat, turn off the microphone, and turn on the camera. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 6th Asian Education Symposium, AES 2021, co-hosted by Universitas Islam Negeri Sulthan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi. AES 2021 is to provide an opportunity for academicians and professionals from various educational fields with cross-disciplinary interests to bridge the knowledge gap, promote research esteem, and the evolution of pedagogy. With this year's main theme, reconstruction of education in the digital era of post-COVID-19. Before we proceed the program today, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Excellency, Director of Postgraduate School, Islamic University of Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha, Universitas Manado, Universitas Islam Negeri Sunan Gunung Jati Bandung, Universitas Mataram, Universitas Pakuan, Universitas Negeri Surabaya, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Universitas Bengkulu, Universitas Kanjuruhan Malang, Universitas Islam Negeri Raden Fatah Palembang. Also, let me extend our warm welcome for our distinguished keynote speakers, the Honorable Professor Dr. Haji Suwaidi, MA PhD, Director of UIN STS Jambi, Indonesia, Professor Dr. Sui Lin Gui, Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, Netherlands, Professor Yaoi Kodama, PhD, the University of Kitakyushu, Japan, Dr. Nina Hood, founder of Education Hub, New Zealand. Honorable distinguished speakers, participant delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as our welcome greetings, we would like to present to you a traditional welcome dance from Jambi, choreographed to symbolize our dedication to welcome the arrival of guests as a way to show hospitality and respect. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jambi's traditional dance, Sekapur Sirih.
kami pusako mulyo. Adaklah resah dari
Ambek kapak di tepi umo, tanam ketolo di tanah pilih. Kedatangan Bapak kami terima, dipersilakan makan sirih. Ikhlas siri nan sekapur, pinang nan selayang, rokok nan sebatang. Tanda penghormatan tertinggi rakyat Jambi, menerima kehadiran Bapak, Ibu, berserta rombongan.
Ladies and gentlemen, for a brief moment, we would like to invite you to sing Indonesian anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite everyone to invoke the Almighty. Let's praise the Almighty God for His blessings we are able to attend the symposium. The opening prayer will be led by Dr. Muslih, MPD.
وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.
نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم ربنا اشرح لنا صدورنا ويسر لنا أمورنا واحلل عقدة من لساننا يفقه قولنا. ربنا أدخلنا مدخل صدق وأخرجنا مخرج صدق واجعلنا من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
bergabung di Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, kampus yang mengintegrasikan nilai Islami, keilmuan, teknologi, dan kemanusiaan. Berada di provinsi yang dikenal sebagai bumi sepucuk Jambi Sembilan Lurah, lembaga pendidikan tinggi yang bernaung di bawah Kementerian Agama Republik Indonesia ini resmi berdiri pada tahun 1967 dengan nama Institut Agama Islam Negeri atau IAIN Sultan Thaha Saifuddin. Memasuki usianya yang ke-50 tahun, institusi ini beralih status menjadi Universitas Islam Negeri. Sebuah transformasi yang semakin menegaskan komitmennya untuk menjadi perguruan tinggi yang inovatif, kompetitif, dan responsif.
Saat ini, Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi telah memiliki mahasiswa keseluruhan yang berjumlah 16.155 mahasiswa dengan 132 mahasiswa internasional. Memiliki 7 fakultas, Fakultas Tarbiyah dan Keguruan, Fakultas Adab dan Humaniora, Fakultas Usuluddin dan Studi Agama, Fakultas Dakwah, Fakultas Syariah, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis Islam, Fakultas Saintek, dan 1 Pasca Sarjana. Memiliki 42 prodi atau jurusan dan 1 D3. Berdasarkan data Sinta atau pengukuran kinerja ilmu pengetahuan dan teknologi yang meliputi kinerja peneliti, penulis, autor, kinerja jurnal, dan kinerja institusi iptek dalam 2 bulan terakhir, Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi memperlihatkan pergerakan yang signifikan. Ranking dalam 3 tahun terakhir, Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi berada pada ranking 404. Dan saat ini meningkat menjadi ranking 315. Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi akan terus berusaha untuk memberikan pelayanan pendidikan yang terbaik sehingga dapat menghasilkan lulusan yang mampu bersaing baik di kancah nasional bahkan internasional. Saat ini, Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi dipimpin oleh Profesor Dr. Haji Suaidi MA PhD dengan visi menjadi universitas sebagai lokomotif perubahan sosial unggul nasional menuju internasional dengan semangat entrepreneurship dan moderasi Islam.
Menjawab tantangan persaingan global, Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin menyelenggarakan layanan akademik berkualitas, mengacu kepada standar mutu internasional dan akreditasi dari Badan Akreditasi Nasional Perguruan Tinggi. Untuk itu, sejumlah kerjasama telah dijalin, baik dengan lembaga di dalam maupun di luar negeri dalam bidang manajemen, peningkatan kapasitas akademik, dan infrastruktur pendidikan. Implementasi dari kerjasama tersebut diantaranya adalah peningkatan kualitas gedung kampus Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi yang didanai oleh Islamic Development Bank.
Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi akan terus berusaha untuk memberikan pelayanan pendidikan yang terbaik sehingga dapat menghasilkan lulusan yang mampu bersaing baik di kancah nasional bahkan internasional.
Excellencies, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, we would like to invite to the chair of the organizing committee to deliver her welcoming address. For Dr. Diana Rosalind M. Hum, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all of director of postgraduate school, professors, lecturers, students, and all participants. It is such an honor for me to welcome you all to the 6th Asian Education Symposium with the theme Reconstruction of Education in the Digital Era of Post-COVID-19. The 6th Asian Education Symposium is an international research conference dedicated to the advancement of theories and practice in education. AES 2021 was organized by Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia in collaboration with Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha, Universitas Negeri Manado, Universitas Islam Negeri Sunan Gunung Jati, Universitas Mataram, Universitas Pakuan, Universitas Negeri Surabaya, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Universitas Bengkulu, Universitas Kanjuruhan Malang, Universitas Islam Negeri Raden Patah Palembang, Institut Agama Islam Al-Quran Al-Intifakiyah Indralaya Palembang, dan Institut Agama Islam Al-Azhar Lubuk. The conference aims to provide opportunities for lecturers, researchers, educators, practitioners, and students from various scientific disciplines, especially those focused on education studies, to share knowledge, scientific work, and result in finding of the study to be published in the reputable index website of science. The EES 2021 promote collaboration excellence between academicians and professionals from education. The conference is expected to develop a strong network of researchers and pioneers in education worldwide. There was 125 papers submissions, and only 96 papers were accepted to be presented in this conference. The accepted papers will be presented in virtual video. All accepted papers are submitted to Atlantis Press. We also invite keynote speakers with a diverse backgrounds that ranging from different countries, from Indonesia, Japan, New Zealand, and Netherlands. On behalf of the committee, we wish to extend our warm welcome and would like to also thank all keynote speakers, reviewers, authors, and committees for their efforts, guidance, contribution, and valuable support. Finally, high appreciation should be forwarded to the hardworking and solid committee members of the conference that include the Jambi team, Bali team, and the last one, Ubi team, that directly, indirectly make this event successful. I sincerely hope you will enjoy today and tomorrow's discussion, debate, and networking. Thank you for your participation. The last one, please let me read Malay Pantun. Tidaklah batang sembarang batang, batang kaktus memang peduli. Bukanlah datang sembarang datang, datang mengundang 10 jari. Dongeng lama Dayang Sumbi, cerita lama di negeri ini. Selamat bergabung dengan UIN Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi. Semoga lancar acara kita hari ini. On behalf of UIN Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, wallahu muwaffiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for Dr. Diana Rosalind for the welcoming speech. Honorable Speaker, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to invite the Chair of AES, Professor Dr. Saifuddin, MPD, to deliver the welcome address.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'du. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful, may peace, mercy, and blessing of Allah be upon you. Invited speakers, distinguished guests, presenter and participant of Asian Education Symposium. It is with great honor I welcome you all to the Asian Education Symposium 2021. Moreover, I honorably welcome our keynote speakers, Professor Dr. H. Suaidi, MA PhD, Director of Universitas Islam Negeri Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, Professor Dr. Sui Lin Gui, Universitas Amsterdam, Professor Yaoi Kodama, PhD, the University of Kitakyushu, and Dr. Nina Hood, founder of Education Hub New Zealand. Taking reconstruction of education in the digital era of post-COVID-19 as its main theme, this conference is one of our attempts to promote collaboration among universities and to provide a space for networking among academics and researchers in education. For countries in Asian region, education is a vehicle that can move people mobility. As now, we are facing Asian economic community. There is a strong need to develop collaboration and partnership among countries, both at regional and international level. It is our hope that the conference will contribute to the development of education as a distinct body of knowledge. At the same time, it is our hope that the conference will enable the universities to be recognized internationally. This conference provides a platform for us to disseminate and discuss our research findings. It is our expectation that the conversation from this conference will inform policy and practices of education, and this event will open up future research on education, while at the same time allowing all participants expanding their network. Hopefully, all the participants will be engaged in fruitful and meaningful discussion. I also would like to express my gratitude to all the keynote speakers to deliver and exchange their ideas. My appreciation also goes to all the committee members who have worked hard to make this event possible. Once again, I wish you all a productive conference. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to take this occasion to greet all of the conference attendees by first expressing our gratitude and thanks to the Almighty God for of His blessing, grace, and mercies that have enabled to us assemble here in this room in good health. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Prof. Dr. Saifuddin, MPD, Chairman of ASEAN Education Symposium, Prof. Dr. Sui Lin Gui, PhD, Rector of UIN Sulthan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi. Thank you and welcome to ASEAN Education Symposium Conference. Also to all of campus leaders, faculty members, and all of participants. I would like to welcome our keynote speakers from Dr. Sui Lin Gui, PhD, from UIN Sulthan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, Indonesia, from Dr. Sui Lin Gui from Amsterdam, Prof. Dr. Yaoi Kodama, PhD, from Japan, and Dr. Nina Hood from New Zealand. We have full house invite speaker ranging from different countries. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic had a very broad impact on every aspect of human life, from the economic, social to educational, field in the field of education. COVID-19, in addition to having a negative impact, namely the cessation of mass teaching and learning processes in various parts of the world, has also become a momentum for the revival of strategies for implementing the education process itself. With the growth and development of the digital era, the COVID pandemic has been able to force academic, practitioner, and education policyholders to develop digital-based education. Therefore, if before COVID, the use of digital platform in learning was still relatively low, then in the era of the COVID pandemic, the use of digital platform has seen a significant increase, starting from basic education and even kindergarten to university using digital platform. Thus, after the COVID-19 pandemic, the use of digital platform in education must be maintained and developed to ensure that the education process in Indonesia remains and continues to be able to accompany global change, the outcome. This is very important. The people, the nations, generation who have the ability to think critically, think creatively, communicate, and collaborate to face the 4.0 to 5.0 revolution era. Dear audiences, this conference therefore is aimed to contribute to the solution of education post-COVID-19. Finally, on behalf of Sulthan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, I wish you fruitful conference filled with stimulating discussion and information sharing, so that together we might look forward to a future of innovative knowledge, research, and technology for humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to officially open this conference by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. May God bless all of us with God help to make this event successful. Wallahu muwaffiq ila aqwamit thariq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the opening remarks from the Director of Postgraduate School Islamic University of Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, Professor Dr. Haji Ahmad Syukri, SSMAG. Now we would like to invite the Director of Postgraduate School Islamic University of Sultan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi again to officially open the 6th Asian Education Symposium, AES 2021. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are now continuing our meeting to the next agenda. That is to hear the keynote speeches, which will be moderated by Professor Dr. Lohputu Artini, MA PhD. So without further ado, I would like to invite the moderator, Professor Dr. Lohputu Artini, MA PhD.
Thank you very much for the Master of Ceremony. Good morning and good afternoon Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, presenters, participants of Asian Education Symposium 2021, wherever you are attending from. Please accept our warm greeting from Universitas Islam Negeri Sulthan Thaha Saifuddin Jambi, the co-host of this year's symposium. My name is Luh Putu Artini, and I'm honored to moderate the plenary session today. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of the symposium is reconstruction of education in the digital era of post-COVID-19. As we all know, for almost 2 years, the education sectors have been hit so hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Education institutions and students of all levels have been deeply impacted. Schools, colleges, and universities are pushed to shut their doors, and classes should be replaced by emergency remote learning platform. Thanks to the vaccinations and COVID-19 pandemic management in the country levels, so that we have a hope that the cases will gradually decrease and we may soon start the new life with our education policies and practices. And this is the inspiration for the symposium theme this year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the keynote plenary session, and we are so proud to have Professor Dr. Haji Suwaidi, MA, PhD from Indonesia, Dr. Nina Hood from New Zealand, Professor Yaoi Kodama from Japan, and Professor Sui Lin Gui from the Netherlands. The keynotes are divided into 2 segments of presentation. So actually there is a brief change in the order of the presentation from the schedule that you may have with you now. It's supposed to be Professor Saidi is the first presenter, but because he has a responsibility at the moment, so that the first presenter will be replaced by Professor Kodama. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce and invite our first keynote. But before that, please be informed that this session is recorded. Please stay muted and keep the video on during the keynote presentation. If you have any question to the presenter, please write in the chat box. Write your name, affiliations, and to who the question is addressed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start with the first presentation. I'd like to introduce Professor Yaoi Kodama, first of all. Professor Yaoi Kodama is affiliated with the University of Kyushu, Japan. She earned her Bachelor of Arts in Education from the Faculty of Education at Kumamoto University in 1988. She earned her master course in education at the same university, Kumamoto University, in 1990, and her doctor course in education at Nagoya University in 1999. Professor Kodama are interested in the research area of sociology and education, partnership between school and community, school improvement and teachers' professions, education for sustainable development in Indonesia and Japan. Her works are published in many national and international journals, and she is an active member in many professional organizations in Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Professor Kodama.
Semua selamat siang. Nama saya Yaoi Kodama dari Universitas Kita-Kyushu. 今日は、ビデオでのキーノートスピーチになりますが、次のパンデミックが終わった頃には皆さんとお会いしてディスカッションをしたいと思っています。
Nama saya Yaoi Kodama. Sekarang kita bertemu lewat virtual, tapi nanti kalau pandemiknya selesai, saya berharap kita bisa bertemu untuk berdiskusi. Baik.
今日は Educational Changes in the Post-COVID-19 Era というタイトルでキーノートスピーチを行います。
Pada kesempatan ini, saya akan memaparkan tentang perubahan pendidikan setelah COVID-19.
アウトラインはこの4つのトピックをお話しするという進め方で話したいと思います。
Seperti bisa dilihat pada outline, saya akan membicarakan tentang 4 hal pada pemaparan saat ini.
それではまず最初にパンデミックのインパクトについてお話しします。
Saya akan memaparkan tentang impact of pandemic. はい。
パンデミックの拡大の影響は、日本では次のような経過で進みました。
Pertama, saya akan menjelaskan tentang pengaruh dari pandemik. Kondisi di Jepang menghadapi awal terjadinya pandemik ini.
日本では学校は4月から3月までです。
Di Jepang, awal pembelajaran itu di bulan April dan berakhir di bulan Maret.
昨年の前の年に、まだ学年が終わっていないときに、総理大臣が学校を一斉休校するということを決めました。
Pada terjadinya pandemik ini, saat itu Perdana Menteri mengumumkan sekolah menjadi libur.
そして新しい年度2020年になって4月になるとまた再び学校が全国一斉で休みになりました。
Pada kejadian pandemik ini, Perdana Menteri mengumumkan bahwa semua sekolah libur, padahal saat itu merupakan awal dari tahun akademik.
2ヶ月間学校が休みでしたが、その間、学校ごとにそれぞれやり方が違う形で教育が行われました。
Sebetulnya pada saat itu ada 2 bulan diliburkan semua sekolah. Semua sekolah kemudian mempersiapkan apa yang harus disiapkan. Tetapi saat itu seperti panik. Jadi setiap sekolah memiliki persiapan yang berbeda-beda.
2020年の3月にある NGO が行ったアンケートでは、子どもたちは一番友達という言葉をたくさん使っていました。それだけ友達に会いたいと思っていたんだと思います。
Pada satu penelitian yang dilakukan oleh pihak NGO LSM, itu didapatkan hasil penelitian bahwa siswa atau anak-anak mereka ingin ketika libur mereka menyatakan ingin pergi ke sekolah dan bertemu dengan teman-teman.
学校が再び始まりました。そして先生たちは学校が始まるととても忙しくなりました。
Akhirnya diputuskan bahwa sekolah dibuka, kemudian siswa pergi ke sekolah. Tetapi itu pada bulan 5. Tetapi guru semuanya menjadi sibuk. Sebetulnya guru sibuk, tetapi ini menjadi lebih sibuk.
特に感染しないように予防するために先生たちはこれまでやっていなかった仕事をすることになりました。
supaya tetap dalam kondisi aman, jadinya ada hal-hal yang tadinya tidak dilakukan oleh guru, sekarang dilakukan.
実際にどのようなことを行っていたかというと、子どもたちの熱を測ったり、そして授業中は子どもと子どもの間をいつもより多く空けて、子どもたちが近づかないようにしました。
Jadi 3 hal baru yang harus dilakukan oleh guru adalah 1, mengukur suhu badan siswa yang datang, kemudian memonitor jarak bangku siswa dengan siswa.
そして子どもたちが学校から帰った後は先生たちが机や教室を消毒したりしました。
Kemudian ketika siswa sudah pulang, guru itu memiliki pekerjaan mengelap bangku dan meja.
しかし、そのパンデミックのパニックの中でも、それより前に、ICT の教育を行っていた学校や地域では、早く、オンラインの授業をすることができるようになりました。
Tetapi di beberapa sekolah yang sebelum pandemi terjadi, mereka bisa dengan menggunakan PC dan pembelajaran online. Karena sekolah tersebut belajar tentang ICT, padahal ini dalam kondisi panik. Jadi dalam kondisi kepanikan, ada beberapa sekolah yang bisa melakukan pembelajaran dengan online.
例えば、つくば市の緑の学園という学校では、まだこの学校ができて1年目なのに、オンラインの授業をすぐに行うようなモデルスクールもありました。
Salah satunya seperti di sekolah Tsukuba, di sekolah Midori, mereka menjadi sekolah model. Jadi ketika hari pertama pandemik, sekolah tersebut sudah langsung menggunakan pembelajaran online.
熊本市では、市内の小中学校すべてでオンラインの授業が早くできるようになりました。
Di kota Kumamoto, semua sekolah SD dan SMP, mereka secara cepat tanggap, kemudian melakukan pembelajaran dengan online.
そして、クラスの子どもたちを2つに分けて、交代で学校に来るようになっても、片方のグループは教室で、もう片方のグループはオンラインで一緒に授業を受けるということができる学校もありました。
Di Kumamoto tersebut ada sekolah Jadi sekolah itu dibagi dua, dalam kelas itu dibagi dua, ada yang belajar di sekolah dan ada yang belajar di rumah. Kemudian yang belajar di rumah itu online, yang di sekolah biasa, secara bergantian. Jadi dari kelas itu ada sambungan langsung online, jadi belajar sama-sama.
続いて、学校教育の変化についてお話をしたいと思います。
Kemudian saya ingin memaparkan juga tentang perubahan sekolah, tentang perubahan di sekolah.
まず最初はギガスクールプログラムについてです。
Pertama tentang Giga School, Global Innovation Gateway.
2018年に日本政府はギガスクールプログラムをしますと宣言しました。
Pada tahun 2018, pemerintah Jepang mengeluarkan kebijakan untuk melaksanakan program GIGA.
ギガの意味はグローバルイノベーションゲートウェイという意味です。
Artinya GIGA itu adalah Global Innovation Gateway.
文部科学省ははじめはこのギガスクールプログラムを2024年3月までで完全に実施するプランでした。
Sebetulnya Kementerian Pendidikan memprogramkan bahwa Giga School ini adalah program yang berakhir pada tahun 2024.
しかし、この計画はパンデミックを理由に実現が早くなりました。
Tapi karena ada masalah pandemik, maka program ini dipercepat.
このギガスクール構想、ギガスクールプログラムは実は最初の方針とちょっと変わってきました。
Giga School ini ada sedikit perubahan dari tujuannya karena dipercepat.
文部科学省ははじめはこのギガスクールプログラムの学習の仕方を公正に個別に最適化された学びという学びを実現するという考え方でした。これは一人一人の学習者に注目をしたやり方です。
Pada program ini tujuannya membuat siswa untuk bisa belajar sendiri-sendiri, mencari informasi sendiri, tetapi karena ada pandemik, lalu dikaji ulang.
もともとの考え方では、学校の形が変わるというプランでしたが、パンデミックがその考え方を変えることになりました。
Jadi sebetulnya program ini dibuat sendiri-sendiri belajar, tetapi kemudian karena pandemik lalu dikaji ulang tentang tujuannya.
先ほどのアンケートで見たように、子どもたちは友達に会いたがっていたわけです。で、このように学校で友達と一緒に学ぶというこれまでの学校の役割がもう一度再認識されました。
Kemudian didapatkan hasil dari angket, seperti yang angket sudah disebar, didapatkan bahwa setiap anak itu ingin pergi ke sekolah dan ingin bertemu dengan teman-temannya. Padahal di dalam program GIGA ini setiap anak belajar masing-masing.
2021年の1月に中央教育審議会がレポートを出しました。
Pada bulan Januari 2021, Dewan Pendidikan mengeluarkan report.
このレポートで先ほど話した方針転換がそのレポートの中に書かれたのです。
Dalam report tersebut dituliskan bahwa seperti yang dikatakan tadi, bahwa anak-anak itu ingin bertemu dengan temannya dan pergi ke sekolah.
実際にレポートの一部のイメージ図を用意しました。
Saya mempersiapkan gambar ini yang seperti bisa Anda lihat di PowerPoint.
この、ブルーの色のところが、一人一人の学習に注目をしたイメージ図です。
Yang bagian yang biru, gambar bagian yang biru, ini adalah image ketika anak itu belajar sendiri-sendiri.
最初のイメージはこのブルーの部分だけでしたが、方針が変わって、この隣のピンクの、一緒に学ぶという学びも含めて、これからはこの2つが両方大事だという、イメージに方針が変わったのです。
Yang bagian yang merah itu adalah anak-anak belajar, siswa belajar bersama teman-teman. Jadi diputuskan bahwa belajar sendiri juga penting, belajar bersama teman-teman juga penting.
ギガスクールプログラムは一人の生徒に一人のタブレットという考え方を実現しようとするのが具体的なやり方の一つです。
Salah satu pembelajaran Giga ini adalah setiap siswa mendapatkan satu PC atau tablet untuk belajar.
ただ、この一人の生徒に一人のタブレットという方針が出る前、日本の学校ではデジタル教育はあまり進んでいませんでした。
Ketika sebelum program setiap anak mendapatkan satu tablet, pelajaran yang menggunakan digital ini di Jepang itu sebetulnya program yang belum sukses.
ただ、日本の子どもたちは、デジタルの、社会に、馴染んでいて、実際にはゲームをしたり、SNS をしたりしています。
Jadi sebetulnya pendidikan menggunakan digital ini tidak secara keseluruhan sukses karena saat itu siswa menggunakan digital ini hanya untuk bermain game atau sosial media saja.
ところが、このインターネットを使ったりして学習をするという時間は他のヨーロッパやアメリカなどの国の子どもたちに比べると少ないということが分かったのです。
Kalau misalnya dibandingkan dengan siswa yang ada di Eropa atau di Amerika, siswa Jepang itu menggunakan internet untuk pembelajaran itu lebih sedikit.
ギガスクールプログラムはこのような日本の子どもたちの現状を変えるということのためにスタートをしたわけです。
Jadi Giga School ini diharapkan dapat merubah siswa-siswa di Jepang supaya mereka belajar lebih banyak, menggunakan teknologi lebih banyak untuk belajar.
そして新しい変化は教師になりたい学生のところにも及んできました。
Kemudian hal lain yang berubah untuk mahasiswa yang ingin menjadi guru, ini ada mata kuliah baru yang harus dipelajari.
今、大学で先生になるための勉強をしている学生は新しく ICT を 使うための科目を勉強することになりました。
Ada mata kuliah baru itu adalah tentang ICT. Mereka diharuskan bisa menguasai teknologi digital.
実際に2021年に学校に教育実習に行った学生は、この ICT の、タブレットなどを使いながら授業を行っています。
Di tahun 2021 ini, calon guru mahasiswa tersebut sambil melakukan perkuliahan sambil penggunaan tablet, menggunakan tablet supaya terbiasa.
続いて、実際に新しい技術を使って行われている授業を先ほど説明した緑の学園の例を使ってお話したいと思います。
Saya ingin menjelaskan juga tentang penggunaan teknologi dalam sekolah seperti yang dilakukan di sekolah Midori.
例えば、デジタル教科書です。これは、子どもたちが使っている教科書のデジタル版で、先生がこのデジタル教科書を使って、図を大きくしたり、統計を見やすくしたりして、より勉強が進むような工夫をするために使っています。
Misalnya di dalam kelas, guru menggunakan digital textbook. Jadi textbook itu ditampilkan lewat monitor dan murid bisa melihat langsung ke monitor. Kemudian itu membuat guru menjadi mudah untuk menerangkannya.
タブレットを使った、学習は、タブレットで検索をするというのはよく行われていますが、緑の学園ではその他に、顕微鏡の機能を使ってカメラを、使って見やすく、植物や動物をこうよく調べるための、道具の使い方をしたり、それから AR 機能を使って、街の探検をするための、学習をしたりもしています。
Di Midori, sekolah Midori juga, mereka misalnya menggunakan tablet untuk belajar dan pembelajaran, kemudian menggunakan internet juga. Salah satu yang dilakukannya adalah dengan menggunakan tablet bisa memoto banyak seperti tumbuhan atau hewan. Kemudian bisa juga digunakan sebagai mikroskop atau menggunakan tablet tersebut untuk melihat kondisi kota. Misalnya dengan menggunakan Google 3 dimensi, siswa bisa jalan-jalan tur kota dengan hanya menggunakan tablet saja.
それから5年生ではロボットを使ったプログラミングの学習が行われています。例えば、緑の学園を他の人に紹介するために学校の良いところを、プログラミングしてロボットにそれを話せるようにしています。
Atau seperti untuk siswa kelas 5 SD, mereka menggunakan robot, namanya robot yang bisa berkomunikasi, di mana mereka bisa saling bertukar cerita dengan robot tersebut.
最後に、今後の日本の教育について展望をしたいと思います。
Berikutnya tentang seperti apa ke depannya prospek pendidikan di Jepang.
パンデミックによって 日本の教育のデジタル化が遅れているということが分かったので、今後、このデジタル教育を進めるために、力が入れられるということが予想されます。
Akibat dari pandemik ini, kita bisa tahu keterlambatan teknologi di Jepang. Keterlambatan digital pendidikan untuk umum di tingkat dasar dan di tingkat menengah itu sangat terlihat.
しかし、新しい技術にはメリットとデメリットがあります。このことを十分に理解して、この道具をうまく使っていく必要があるでしょう。
Jadi kita bisa melihat penyebaran media digital yang semakin cepat, kemudian diiringi dengan membaiknya lingkungan di sekolah, mana teknologi yang bisa dipakai dan mana teknologi yang tidak digunakan, itu kita bisa melihat.
そしてもう一つはカリキュラムをリデザインするということです。
Kemudian salah satunya mengulang, difikirkan untuk mendesain ulang kurikulum.
学校が休みの間、カリキュラムが遅れたというのは事実ですが、だからといって1年間で全部終わらせようとするのではなく、もう少し長い期間で徐々に学習を進めるというように工夫をする必要があるでしょう。
Jadi ketika ada libur karena pandemik, kurikulum itu menjadi tidak sampai target. Kemudian jadi pembelajarannya tidak sampai target. Diusulkan daripada tergesa-gesa mengejar kurikulum, diusulkan untuk memperpanjang waktu tahun ajaran.
加えて、日本では、不登校の子どもたちが、少なくないと言われています。そしてこの不登校の子どもたちはオンラインの授業で学校の教育に参加することができたのです。
Kemudian hal lain yang ditemukan bahwa dengan adanya pembelajaran online ini, anak-anak yang tadinya tidak bisa pergi ke sekolah karena sesuatu hal, dengan adanya online ini mereka jadi bisa belajar kembali.
このようなオンラインの良さというのもさらに、進めていく必要があるでしょう。
Jadi dipikirkan bahwa ternyata pendidikan, pembelajaran melalui online ini dinilai berhasil juga untuk meratakan pendidikan.
これで、私からのキーノートスピーチを終わりたいと思います。Terima kasih Fania atas. Fania.
Terima kasih banyak atas perhatiannya katanya. Terima kasih. Ini pemaparan dari saya. Terima kasih banyak untuk semuanya.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。
Well, thank you so much for Professor Kodama for very insightful presentation. This is really a very interesting and as well as very important information about what happened in Japan. Yeah, especially in the primary and secondary education in Japan during the pandemic, and also the future trend in Japan. Yeah, so it's very interesting to know that before the pandemic, Japan has had a program which is called GIGA, which stands for Global Innovation Getaway, in which the school has been equipped with technology and also digital literacy. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic break out, and this program has been intensified because of that. We also learn about what Japan has done to cope with the schooling, in which many children really want to go back to school, while some others probably enjoy studying from home. But not all children maybe enjoy studying from home. And this is also something that has been considered in Japan very well. One thing that is very interesting with the presentation is that there is also I have to say refinement with the teacher education curriculum in Japan, in which there is a very strong need for a new course in teacher education, which is called probably ICT-based something, yeah, ICT-based learning, because it's not mentioned in the name of the course, but it is very important for the prospective teachers to have digital literacy. Another thing here is about prospective teachers as well, because the students were given, each of the students are given tablet to learn. The teachers should also have gone through, they should go through a process of teaching in which the students have a tablet in their hand. So this is also very interesting that the prospective teacher have to have the experience of doing that before making use of the tablet for the student to use. Another thing here, it's very important for the teacher to improve their digital literacy and use digital-based material. For example, they use digital textbook so that the teacher can share, for example, a story on the screen, and then they can put and focus the discussion on the story together. An example of a school also given here with Midori School, in which the school used tablet and in which the tablet is used as a mobile learning. The children have the tablet to learn outside of the school. They take pictures. They use the tablet as a, for example, as a microscope. That's very interesting. And other things. And also the use of robot for the students to exchange story. And another thing here is also presented about Japanese future trend. Yeah, in the future, Japan has learned their lesson. I think not only Japan, but everybody in the world has learned so much from the pandemic. In Japan, it has been presented that the pandemic bring a full awareness about what is lacking and what is needed in education or in school system. And it is identified that there is a strong need for digital literacy and also more advanced technology, which is related to instruction. There is also a need for curriculum development, because during the pandemic, the target of the curriculum may not be achieved. So it is very important for the school and also the Department of Education to reconsider about the curriculum design in the future. Well, that's what I can conclude from the presentation from Professor Kodama. And I believe that everybody learned so much from the presentation. We are quite ahead of time with the first presentation of plenary session. Yeah, we're supposed to start at 11:10, and then we finish at 11:55. But actually, we were about half an hour ahead of time. So that makes us, have more time for the lunch break. Yeah, the lunch break is supposed to start at 11:55, but because the question will be answered in the second segment of this plenary session. So if you do have questions, please write your question in the chat box. We are going to attend to the questions after the break. For now, we are going to start with our break. So it's supposed to be 30 minutes, but we have longer time. Yeah. We are going to come back for the second session, the second segment of the plenary session at 12:25. Please be advised that you have to be here on time because we are going to have 3 very interesting keynotes. We are going to have Professor Saifuddin, Dr. Nina Hood, and we also going to have Professor Sui Lin Gui with a very interesting presentation. Thank you very, very much for your attention on our first part of this keynote. And please enjoy your break. And remember, we are back to the visual room at 12:25. See you then. afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second segment of plenary session. And now we are ready for 3 keynotes in this segment. Before we start, I would like to inform you that segment, the committee will take 5 best questions. So if you have questions, if your question is selected, you will be invited to ask your question live. And the committee will provide souvenirs for you that will be sent to your address. So please stay tuned in and write your question in the chat box. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have 3 presentations in a row. We are going to start with Professor Sui, and then followed with Dr. Nina Hood, and then last but not least, Professor Sui Lin Gui. Each of the presentation will last for half an hour, and then the question and answer session will be placed at the end of the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the key keynote speakers. The first presenter is Professor Sui. He is director of Universitas Islam Negeri Sulthan Thaha Saifuddin, Jambi, Indonesia, since 2019. He has 2 doctorate degrees, one from Universitas Islam Negeri Syahid, Jakarta, and another one, a PhD degree from the University of Melbourne, Australia. He earned his Master of Arts on Islamic Studies in McGill University, Canada. He has many publications in national and international journals that show his recent interest in human capital, social cultural changes, political model, and democracy from the Islamic perspective. Today, his presentation is entitled Educational Dynamic in the Era of COVID-19 Pandemic. The second presenter is Dr. Nina Hood. She's a senior lecturer at the University of Auckland, New Zealand, and she is the founder of Education Hub, New Zealand. She earned her Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Oxford in 2015. She has 2 master degrees, Master of Science from the University of Oxford and Master of Arts from New York University. She received many significant distinctions and awards from different universities and won many competitive research grants. She has a remarkable number of publications in many reputable international journals and wrote many book chapters and authored a book. Many of those are in the field of education and digital media. Dr. Hood is also invited speaker and keynote in many conferences in New Zealand, UK, USA, Slovakia, Indonesia, and other countries. The third presenter is Professor Sui Lin Gui. She's a well-known expert in the Netherlands in the field of inclusive education. She has PhD in instructional psychology and Master of Science in educational psychology and pedagogy, with specialization in learning disabilities. Currently, she divides her working time between Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam and Windesheim University of Applied Sciences in Zorla. At VU Amsterdam, she is an academic leader of a team of professional applying lesson study within education in a range of settings. At Windesheim University, she is a professor and heads of a professorship called Teachers in Inclusive Educational Setting. Her research focuses on design of inclusive learning environment that cater to differential needs of children and how to prepare teachers for inclusive education. She takes the leading role in many professional organizations and currently is a visiting professor at the Department of Early Childhood at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia in Bandung. There are so many amazing work that Professor Gui has produced, written, published, presented, that is not possible to be mentioned in detail. So ladies and gentlemen, we are so lucky to have the 3 keynotes. So please join me to welcome, first of all, Professor Suhaidi. But before that, please be informed that each of the presentation will last for 30 minutes. That will leave us some time for question and answer at the end. Professor Suhaidi, time is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. First of all, I would like to apologize for not being able to come earlier. Even at this time of the day, I am actually still joining another programs with other rectors all over Indonesia, which I as a rector have to attend this. So I might not spend a half an hour, but I think just a few minutes. Let me start from this. Around 1.5 decades ago, might be earlier than that, we discussed the opportunities and challenges faced by people when we enter the era of Industrial Revolution 4.0. And then many thought at that time that there are opportunities rather than challenges. There are people, also countries or educational institutions that adopt slowly and some others adopt very quickly. But when the pandemic COVID-19 came, all of a sudden, all institutional educations were forced to adopt with the new technology. And as a result, there are many actually educational institutions that fail to adopt very quickly, and at the same time they have to. So take for example from my university, which is one of the universities who took this who adopt quite slower than other universities. And later on, we see that whatever educational institution take slower steps or policies will face more and more challenges rather than using this as opportunities. So for universities who adopt the new technology during this pandemic, so I try from another perspective. Universities which adopt to these new technologies slower will face more challenges from day to day. So what can we do, or what universities like this can do? So they have to adopt these new technologies without thinking because of this COVID-19, but because we were forced to do this. We were forced to adopt this situation whether or not there is a pandemic COVID-19 or not. So from now on, I think by, let's say, for example, by using this Zoom application, we can see the more opportunities rather than challenges. So rather than complaining what we are facing, why not we try to look at this all changes as opportunities? So for students or for university leaders, and also like me as a rector, it's better to use these opportunities to come with new policies, come with some new ideas offered to students and lecturers. By that way, whether or not this pandemic COVID-19 will end, but we use these opportunities rather than looking at the challenges. So what I can see, I have no notes on my hand right now, and I'm sorry that I have to end here, that I have to end the meeting after this, but I will try to listen if there are some questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sui. Yeah, despite his tight schedule, that he's managed to be here to present the topic of the dynamic. Yeah, this is the educational dynamic in the era of COVID-19. So if I can just restate, what he said, in this era, the university or the educational institution that can situation, that can move forward. So those universities who are probably not very adaptive to the situation, they will be left behind. Technology has provided us with alternatives and choices so that we can move forward despite of all challenges. I think it's the summary of his presentations. Thank you very much, Professor Sui, for making the time, despite of your very tight schedule. We are going to move to the second questions. Are you taking question, Prof? For now, are you?
If there are questions, I'll answer it now because I have to. Okay. So if there are questions, I answer it now.
Okay. If there are questions, you are willing to answer it now. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions regarding the educational dynamic in era of COVID-19 pandemic, please write in the chat box, or you can raise that live virtually. If there is any questions.
No question?
Or maybe later when there are questions, we will just send it to you, Professor, if you don't mind.
Yes, okay. Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to the second presentation. I already introduced our second presenter, Dr. Hood, just want to check, Dr. Nina Hood, are you here?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, yes, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's wonderful to be with you all. I just wish I could be in Indonesia.
Thank you so much. I wish to see you in person here, actually.
Yes.
Anyway, Yeah, Dr. Nina Hood is going to present a very interesting topic, how existing evidence about effective teaching can inform online learning. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Nina Hood.
Thank you.
Time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is it all right if I share my screen? I've got a presentation I wanted to share, but I don't have permission at the moment.
Okay. And do you have the PowerPoint?
Oh, no, hang on. I've got it now, I think. So I should be. All right, let's see if this works. No, let's have a look. Doesn't seem to want to.
Maybe the committee have the copy? No?
No, they don't, but that's all right. If I can't make it work, I will.
Okay. No worries.
I can do it anyway. Hang on, what's happening here? Sorry about this. Terrible technical issues, particularly when we're talking about online education. It's not a good start, is it? For some reason, it really doesn't want to share, which is a shame, but that's all right. I will just persevere and open system. I'm so sorry about this. No, all right. I will just talk, and sorry, you're just going to have to look at me for this presentation rather than my actual presentation itself. So thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you and to be able to talk a little bit about what we've learned about learning from and during COVID-19. And a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today is focused on a study that I undertook last year, which looked at the impact that COVID-19 and the lockdown had on particularly the learning and the experiences of teachers at the school level. But I think a lot of the implications from the work and a lot of the findings have a lot of similarity and a lot of relevance to the higher education sector as well. And so I'll talk to you about what we found out from the work that we did interviewing and surveying teachers and students and parents in New Zealand, and also connect this into some of the findings that we have from around the world as well. So I think one of the things to think about when we talk about what happened with learning during lockdowns and during COVID-19, and here in New Zealand, actually this is the first day that children have gone back to school in over 3 months. So we are still very much living in a online and remote world. But what we're noticing is that when we did suddenly go to a lockdown period and learning and education had to shift to remote learning and to the digital space, what we found was that there were a myriad of approaches that were adopted by schools and by universities for how to cope with this. And I think it's really interesting to make sure that when we think about learning and what we learn about education during the pandemic is recognizing that it's not a consistent or a one approach system, that the experiences that both teachers and students had during that time period were incredibly varied. And so I think it's really interesting for us to understand that and to recognize that. So what I want to take you through in this talk today is to talk to you about some of the findings about the impact that we saw the pandemic have on particularly on students and to a lesser degree on teachers, what we've learned about what makes effective remote or distance teaching, and then also talk about and reflect on some lessons that this might have for us as we look towards education in the future, and whether there are lessons that we can learn from the lockdown and from online learning that might be applicable to education more generally. So the first thing to think about is, and this has received growing attention around the world, is what actually happened to academic achievement when we shifted learning to the online and digital space. And here I'm thinking particularly about school students but it's also relevant to students at university. And what we find by and large is that for the most part, achievement decreased. And unfortunately, you can't see my slides where I've got a graph showing produced by the Brookings Institute in the USA, which shows the achievement of maths, comparing what happened in 2019 versus 2020. But what we see is that there is a remarked decrease in academic achievement when we had that shift to remote learning. And I think understanding that whilst online education has many positives and absolutely was essential during lockdowns and during the pandemic, we also know that it does not seem to be as effective in terms of supporting people's learning as in-person learning. And I'm going to unpack a couple of the reasons why that might be. If we go beyond just academic achievement and we think about, well, what happened to student engagement when we shifted from in-person face-to-face learning to distance learning? And I think what we saw are some quite different profiles emerging of how engaged students were. And what we're also understanding was that there was quite a lot of variation. And we had, by and large, we probably had a larger group of students who were more disengaged during distance and online learning than they were when they were actually face-to-face and in a physical classroom. But we did still have a group of students who are typically very engaged in face-to-face education and in the classroom, and also maintained that during distance learning. But there's also another group, which for me is a really interesting group. And this is the group of students who typically are more disengaged when you're face-to-face in the classroom. But when there was a shift to online learning, their engagement actually started to increase. And for a myriad of reasons, for a range of different reasons, the online environment and being out of the actual physical school space actually led to increased engagement for these students. And I think there are some really useful lessons for us in understanding why it was that for some students, that online distance learning actually seemed to promote greater engagement for them. Another interesting thing to emerge from an understanding about what we can learn about what made effective online learning was the nature of the school culture appeared to have quite a significant impact on how well engaged students were and how well the online learning worked for people. And I think what we can see here, and this connects back to the topic of my talk today, is that we know that the culture within a school or the culture within a university or the culture within a classroom makes a significant difference to the nature of the learning and the relationships that exist between the teacher and the students. And what we saw when learning shifted into the digital space was that it was those schools that had a much stronger and more cohesive and unified school culture in your ordinary face-to-face environment were better able to adapt and create a stronger culture in the online environment. And this actually mirrors a lot of research that we have around the importance of school culture, which has found that the development of a strong professional and student community actually ends up being more important than some of the structural conditions of teaching. And we definitely saw that play out. And I think one of the things that was behind the importance of school culture in the online space was that we know that the interpersonal relationships that exist are absolutely critical for learning. And what we also know, and this goes back to research that we've had over a number of years around online learning, is that it is much easier to build strong relationships if you have an offline relationship with students first. That it's much harder to develop those strong relationships when you just start online and to foster and build those. And I think that's something that we definitely saw come through in the lockdown learning and in the digital education, is that the stronger the interpersonal relationships were and the stronger a school and a classroom culture was before we shifted into remote learning, normally the better the online learning was going to be, because those relationships were already in place and already strong. Another interesting thing that's come out of the research, and this was very strong within New Zealand, was whilst obviously when we move to online learning, in many ways it becomes a lot harder to create a strong relationship between the home and the school. In a number of different instances, it actually enabled teachers to gain a far greater understanding of their students' home lives, and to start to build more powerful relationships with the families that go to their schools. And there was often a lot more communication going on during online learning between the school and the family and back again than there was in sort of your usual day-to-day in-person education. So that's an area where there was actually something quite positive to come out of the shift to online learning. If we then look at what the research showed about some of the skills and the dispositions that really needed to be present in students to make the most of online learning, there are some really interesting findings that came out of the time during COVID-19. And again, a number of the things that we're seeing are very much connected to themes that are already present in a lot of the research literature around online and digital learning. One of the really important things to come out of the research, and one of the things that was very much associated with stronger student outcomes, was around the importance of students being able to self-manage and to self-regulate. And so if we think about, well, what does that mean? If we think about what self-regulation is, it's the process by which students monitor and control their thinking, their motivation, and their behavior in order to achieve certain goals. So it's thinking about how well were students actually equipped to be able to organize the learning that they needed to do, to be able to decide when they were going to be undertaking particular tasks, and how well were they able to reflect on what they were doing and manage their performance. And one of the things that we really strongly found was that the students who were better able to self-regulate and self-monitor their learning in an in-person environment, so had developed those skills already in the classroom, were better equipped and better able to apply them into the online space. And that for students who hadn't had that opportunity to really build up that capacity to self-regulate and to self-monitor, struggled a lot more when they moved into the online learning space. And I think there's a really important lesson here for teachers to think about how in the course of their teaching, they are actually explicitly teaching the students how to self-regulate and how to self-monitor and how to self-reflect on their learning. And they build that into the learning process, because we know that those skills are absolutely fundamental to supporting students to engage in all sorts of learning activities. And I think what we know is that the research has really clearly demonstrated that in a majority of cases, the learners who are best able to navigate the learning experience in online courses are those who already have considerable learning experience and have the necessary skills, knowledge, and dispositions to be able to regulate and drive their own learning. And I think this is a really important thing for everyone to remember, just in part for any teacher, whether they're at the school level, whether they're at the university and higher education level, that actually building those learning skills and that knowledge and those dispositions is a really important thing to be instilling in learners. And I think we sometimes forget that those skills are absolutely paramount when we shift to the online learning space as well. Another thing that we found, and this was particularly strongly came out of the research that I undertook in the New Zealand context, but we're also seeing it come out of contexts in other countries and to be something that others are finding as well, is that the way that people designed the learning experience for their students online was critically important. But what for me is so interesting is that what's come out of the research is that the learning design decisions that were important for online learning and that seem to be associated with the strongest outcomes for students are also the things that we know from your regular face-to-face teaching in a classroom to be really important as well. And so I think it's a really interesting thing for us as teachers to be thinking about, is that what works in an online setting is very much matching onto what we know about what makes effective learning in an offline face-to-face classroom. So if we take a look at some of the things that came out as being absolutely critically important for supporting students' learning and for keeping learners engaged, we can actually, they map very nicely onto what we know from the science of learning. So the first thing that came up was making sure that in an online environment, teachers were really clearly communicating what the learning objectives are. So being very, very clear for students about what it is that the teachers wanted them to be learning, and also to provide a clear rationale for the work that was being undertaken. So making sure that students really had a good idea and a good understanding of what it was they were expected to be doing and why. We then know that, and this is something that's been coming out and has been present in the research on online learning for a long time, but I think has been really reinforced during the pandemic, was that it's really important when thinking about the learning journey and the learning activities that students are going to be doing, that they're structured into an appropriate sequence of tasks, and that we're doing what's called chunking information. And that means breaking information and breaking the learning down into small, manageable pieces so that we're not overloading students. And one of the things that we know is particularly effective in online learning is short, sharp learning activities. And that you don't want to have that sort of, having an hour-long lecture for students in an online environment is much less effective than doing multiple 5-minute lectures or short talks that students can engage with. It's also really important that teachers are thinking about how they can provide adequate scaffolding to enable students to be able to access the learning. So often it's about not just giving students the end activity, but actually providing a sequence of tasks that step up, that sort of lead the students into the sort of thinking and activities that you want them to be doing. Another thing that came up as being really important was making sure that teachers provided what's known as explicit or direct instruction when teaching new content or skills, and making sure that they were connecting new ideas back to what had been previously taught. And also what came out as being really important was ensuring that students were also receiving regular feedback on what they were doing. That rather than just letting students get on with the learning, making sure that there were lots of opportunities for students and teachers to check in with one another to make sure that they were understanding things accurately, and also giving students an opportunity to revisit content and to engage with content in a range of different ways. A few of the other things that we found to be really important in an online learning environment was firstly the idea of choice. And choice came about in a number of different ways, but it was, I think, one of the things that we found and one of the things that we saw was that giving students some degree of autonomy to make their own decisions about how exactly they were going to engage in their learning. So that might be for any given learning objective that a teacher has. They give students 2 different choices of how they could undertake that work, and they provide students with some degree of autonomy to decide what's going to work best for them. And what we found was that the teachers that built in a degree of choice and autonomy into their teaching tended to have students that exhibited higher levels of motivation. But what we also know is that motivation and mean this is the same in any context, but motivation isn't a static construct. So an individual's motivation is going to shift depending on the day, depending on the activities that they're doing, depending on the subjects that they're engaging with. But one of the things we have definitely seen is that the longer that people were in lockdown and the longer they were engaging in online learning and not getting that same face-to-face engagement that they'd have in a classroom, the more and more they struggled with motivation and the less motivated they became. And I think another thing that came out very strongly in the research literature was around the importance of the idea of challenge and making sure that the learning that was provided was at an appropriate level of challenge. So it wasn't so easy that students could quickly go through the work and didn't really need to think or engage, but also wasn't so hard that it caused them to disengage because they just couldn't quite get there. So thinking about how you pitch learning activities at the right level of challenge for your students is really critically important. And I think one of the things that's come out really strongly in the research, and I'm sure you'll all be aware of this, but something that was really challenging for people during distance and online learning was the loss of social interaction and social connection. And we know that learning is very much a social enterprise, and that social connection as part of learning is a really important part of the learning process. And what we found and what teachers were finding was that it was much harder to build a strong sense of connection and rapport with their students in online learning, and that they found that when they shifted from face-to-face learning to online learning, it felt far more mechanical and far less personal. And I think they also found that it was also a lot harder for teachers to gauge exactly what and how their students were learning and whether their students were really understanding the content that they were wanting them to learn. And so I think it's, whilst I absolutely believe that online learning has a really important role to play in education moving forward, I don't think that it's ever going to be the entirety of education, and that it is absolutely critical that we maintain that social connection and that social element of education and of learning, because there's something that's fundamentally important around that social connection to learning and to education more generally. Another big picture learning that came out of COVID-19, definitely in New Zealand, but I think we're seeing this in findings from education around the world, was around notions of equity. And what it did is it really identified, and I can take the example of New Zealand, but it really identified the fact that we have and we continue to have an unequal education system. And the term the digital divide has been around for quite a long time. And I think the pandemic has definitely shown us that the digital divide is still very much a prominent part of education and learning. But I think what we've really seen about the digital divide is when the term was first coined, it was used as a sort of to denote the notion of those who had access to technology and those who did not. And whilst we're absolutely still seeing a digital divide in those ways about those people, people who do have access to technology and those who don't, what we're also learning is that the digital divide is far more nuanced than just a question of who has access and who doesn't. It's increasingly becoming apparent around notions of inequalities of participation. So even if people do have access to a device and an internet connection, then what we're also seeing is significant inequalities in the ability of students and learners to be able to participate fully in online learning. And that it's really critical that we think about ensuring that all people have the skills and the dispositions to be able to engage in that online environment. And the third way that we're seeing the digital divide manifest is around outcomes, and that there's a growing disparity in outcomes, which is a result of the ways in which technology is used rather than just whether we have access to technology or not. And I think that's a really important thing for us to remember moving forward, is thinking about how we can address those questions of equity within the online learning environment. Some other really interesting findings that came up was around whether we could rethink to some degree the structure and organisation of our schools and our universities. And I think one of the things that became very apparent in the online and distance learning that's developed during COVID-19 is that there is an opportunity for us to rethink aspects of how we structure and organise educational organisations. And so one of the things that came up very prominently, particularly among high school teachers and high school students, was, is there an opportunity to rethink how time is used in schools? So we tend to think about schools very much as a standard school day. So you have 6 or 7 hours in school, you go from one class to another, you go through your different subjects. But I think what we found during the pandemic was that our students were engaging in different ways, and they didn't necessarily follow the same set structure in their learning that they would in your traditional school environment. So I think there's a real opportunity for schools to think about whether they still need to structure their days in the same way, or whether there's an opportunity to be a little bit more flexible in terms of how they do that. And I think that there is a real opportunity there to think about how we bring on elements of digital and online learning to help support and enhance in-person learning. And I think that there's definitely some more work for us to do about thinking there. But if I step back and I think about, well, what have we learned both from research prior to the pandemic and also the experiences of people during COVID-19 about the role that digital technologies could play within education? For me, the thing that I really hope is going to happen is that we'll find a way to utilize digital technologies to humanize education. And I think that sometimes we, in our rush towards trying to adopt more technology within education, we actually don't necessarily think carefully enough about what we actually mean by education and what it means to be educated. And for me, there will always be within education and within teaching a very strong humanistic, moral and civic agenda. And that I don't believe that education and teaching are ever going to exist solely in the service of the economy or in simply preparing young people to go into the workplace and to get jobs. We've got to also think about the other elements of education that we are developing as teachers, both in schools and in higher education and in universities. So for me, I think there are some really important questions for us to be asking around how digital technologies could work to humanize education. And for me, that's about thinking, well, what are some of the opportunities that digitization and automation might offer us that then enable us to spend more time within the classroom on those social interactions and on thinking about what the teacher is uniquely placed to bring to education. So for me, if I was thinking about a particular challenge that's come out of the pandemic and what we as teachers and as educators can think about, it's about thinking about, well, what are the opportunities that technology provides us, and where can technology add real value to education, which enables us as teachers to think far more carefully about the unique things that we can bring as individuals and within the social elements within education to really take education and teaching and learning forward into the next decades. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm very happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much.
Professor Dina Hood. That's a very inspiring presentations. Yeah, everybody have shared, the same problem with education during the COVID pandemic. And Professor Hood research is probably providing us with a lot of ideas and answers, ideas for further research in different countries, and also information about what actually are the positive and the negative side of having the pandemic with us for almost 2 years now. Just let me to summarize the most important thing from the talk. And then after that, we are going to let everybody here, all the participants and audience, to raise questions through the chat box. Yeah. This research was conducted last year, which mainly looked at what does the teacher think about. I have to take a look at my note. Yeah. So what actually the effect of pandemic? Yeah, what happened with learning during the lockdown, and then what the effect of that, the pandemic, on learning and teachers. And according to the research, it said that what is obvious during the pandemic here is that the achievement of student achievement is decreasing. That's probably the negative side, but I think it's really dependent on how actually their learning are assessed. But the positive side is that the students can be more engaged, but whenever they have the experience previously of learning, which engage them, which also build their self-directed learning, self-regulated learning. So when they have that experience, whenever they come to online learning, they can manage the online learning very well, and then they still have the engagement. So this is really something to do with what happened earlier, I think, according to Dr. Nina. Yeah? So what happened earlier, before the pandemic? What actually the students have experienced at schools, whether they have been given opportunities to develop their autonomy, to develop their self-regulated learning. When it happens, there is no problem. But there will be problem with online learning whenever the student were not provided with that opportunity at the beginning. So what should become the concern of education nowadays is to really provide what the student really need so that they can build their autonomy. Some of the suggestions here that the teachers should build the student learning through scaffolding so that they can build their regulate learning. And it's include also the students should receive regular feedback so that they know what have they learned, what they haven't learned. And also opportunity for students to revisit content and give them choices. I think this is a very big thing, yeah, give them choices, because when we give them choices, they will work on what they really want to do. So this is, I think, very, very important so that it builds the autonomy, because making decisions should be trained to students. And also that motivation is not something static. Motivation is probably promoted by the situation, by the learning environment. So this is also the concern of the teacher to make the student really motivated. And also when organized online learning, it is very important that the teachers should think about the outcome. And
what works well in online learning is very much dependent on what the student have received during the offline. And then also there are some challenges that have been mentioned as well. So ladies and gentlemen, that's some of the conclusion that I can make of the presentations. And for the future, Dr. Hood also questions about the structure of educational organization now. Maybe we need to rethink about the organization of the school because things are very different after the COVID-19. Do we still need the same structure or do we need to be more flexible? And also, what are the role of technology in education? And also, what are the unique role of the teacher in education in the new normal? And what opportunities are provided by technology? So a lot of questions that probably inspire new research in this area. And I myself think about some of the ideas of the research from you, Dr. Hood. Thank you so much. Now let's take, we haven't had the opportunity to take questions for now because we have to move on with the next presentations. We are inviting now, hang on a minute, I need to take my note. We are going to invite Professor Sui Lin Gui, and she's in the Amsterdam. Hello, Professor Gui, are you here?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
What time is it now?
It's nearly 7 a.m., so selamat pagi.
7 a.m. in the morning, so good morning. Sorry to wake you up very early in the morning.
It's okay, I can see. I have no light, so I'm going to put on the light, sorry.
Okay. And I know it's quite cold now. It's the beginning of winter, I guess.
See it better? Yes.
Okay, everybody can see you now very clearly. Professor Gui, I have introduced you earlier, so I give you the time now for the presentation. It's your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Each time I get an invitation from Ibu Vina, I think she's amongst us, so thank you so much I'm very honored to speak to you. Usually this time of the year I would be in your place in Bandung, Indonesia, and I'm very sad that I cannot visit this year because of the situation. The situation here in the Netherlands now is not good. We are in lockdown again. So I hope we will survive until Christmas. But in the meantime, our research is a little bit on hold now because of the situation. But I'm going to talk to you about a project we have been doing for 2 years already. The title in your program is not the one I'm going to talk about. So something went wrong with the title. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, can you please? I cannot share my screen. It says it's disabled.
Can you make Prof. Go yourself? Okay, ready.
I'm the co-host now. So it's a
yes, it's on.
Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see my
Yes,
screen?
yes.
Thank you. Yes, it's a research project we've been working on already for 2 years. And luckily we met each other before Corona broke out. And the title of my presentation is Catch Them While They're Good. And it's a project where we develop augmented reality. I'm going to explain this to you to support student learning within the PBIS framework. And I'm going to explain all the abbreviations to you. I'm one of the project leaders for Amsterdam, so the Netherlands, and we received funding from the European Union and Horizon 2020 project for five years to do so. So I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what it is, and the content of this project fits well with what we're doing today, because we have to social distance, we have to we have to walk along the lines, and all these kinds of behavior which are called expected behavior. So most probably we're going to use this also in the schools where pupils have to social distance and have to wear masks. But we are just in the beginning of developing the augmented reality. Okay, so acknowledgements to my team in the Netherlands, which are Jeroen Pronk and Wilma Jongejan. And we have partners in Italy, which are Giuseppe Chiasese and Crispino Tosto, with the whole team behind them. And they have developed the augmented reality. So I'm going to give you an introduction to the project, the Arete project, talk a little bit about values and expectations, because nowadays these are very important, because you have to derive your behavior from those. The framework of school-wide positive behaviors, but I think I have talked about this earlier when I was in Bandung, so maybe some of you who have been there during my lectures can recognize this. Then a study on these behavioral expectations throughout the Netherlands, Italy, and Lithuania, and then I'm going to talk about the project itself, so the augmented reality. This is a project, so I can see it's very small, but we have 3 pilots in it, and in all the pilots, augmented reality is being used. So it's a new technology, and it's not being used very much in schools. Nowadays, usually they use virtual reality, but we think augmented reality is a better device to do so, because everybody has their phone or a mobile device. There are 3 pilots. The pilot 1 concerns English literacy skills. Pilot 2 is STEM education, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the pilot 3, which I'm the leader for, is for behavior management and self-management. So within this project, pilot 3, we want to elevate students' behavior management and self-regulatory skills via augmented reality within the PBS framework. So I'm going to explain you a little bit about SWPBS. So what is it? So here we go. We know that in a classroom there are diverse educational needs of students, and for teachers it's difficult to manage students' classroom behavior at the same time. It's one of the most challenging goals for teachers, and they often feel overwhelmed and lost in trying to do so. And each time now when we go into the classrooms, because we have had 4 lockdowns already, it's difficult for students to go from online to on-site and to relate to each other and to relate to each other's behavior. And in this case, schools who implement school-wide positive behavior support, they have they agree with each other how the behavior should be done, how students but also adults should behave, or what is the expected behavior of children as well as adults. So this project we're doing is, I think, timely, because everybody needs to have expected behavior, and without expected behavior in the classroom, it's difficult to learn and to behave well or to develop social emotionally well. So what is a school-wide positive behavior support? It's a problem-solving framework that can help schools and their teachers to build systems of support around teaching and reinforcing expected behavior, not only of students, but also of teachers. So basically, you decide on values and behavioral expectations, and when you do so, you build these around teaching and practice. So the premise of this framework is that we cannot make students learn and behave. So you cannot fix the brain, or you cannot take a pill to do so, so that students learn and behave well. But what we can do is create environments that create the likelihood that students learn and behave. So we do have influence in creating these environments. And these environments are guided by a core curriculum and are implemented with consistency and fidelity. This means that we see behavior as any other subject in a school. So like mathematics or geography or languages, we see behavior as a subject. So we need to teach behavior explicitly in a school environment. And in order to do so, we create these inclusive environments and we build a curriculum and we are designing lessons to do so. And we coach teachers and teacher teams to implement this core curriculum. These are the multi-tiered systems of support. So you build systems like building them on values and behavior expectations. You gather data, whether they have done the behavior, and of course you teach and practice them. So I'm going to focus on the practice part. How do you teach and practice these kinds of expected behaviors? But first, you formulate values and expectations in your school and in your setting. So we ask the teacher teams, what are your values and what are your expectations for learning? So here you can see a picture of a parking lot in the States where 300,000 schools work with PBIS, and they reward teachers when they do the expected behavior, and then they can park in a specific space in the parking lot. So then it's reserved for you, and then you're a member of the month. Or they give you reinforcement or tokens or any kinds of compliments to do so. And when you do so with the teachers, you can also do this with the pupils. So first they formulate values and expectations for their school or their setting where they're in. And we know that when you do reinforced behavior, that everything that receives attention will grow. So you build a system of teaching and practice. You teach the values and the behavioral expectations. You model the expected behavior, and then you practice it. And then, of course, you reinforce it. So you reward the behavior. We always say, catch them while they're good. So you need to reinforce the expected behavior instead of the non-expected behavior. So the behavior which is not expected. And this is how we work with behavior of students. How can you reinforce the behavior, what you want to see from the pupils? So the positive reinforcement system is important in school-wide PBS. So anyone who can read this receives a sticker. So this is a way to say, okay, the expected behavior is indeed that you pay attention. So you can see in the picture, but the pupil who is sitting backwards, he is not doing the expected behavior. So anyone who can read this receives a token positive reinforcement. So how do you do the values and behavior expectations? So we asked in a study via a survey, and we got the data in from the Netherlands, Italy, and Lithuania. We asked them the values and expected behaviors they formulate in their schools. And we needed this input because we needed to build and develop AR application and curriculum. So AR is an augmented reality. So it's an overlay over the real world. So for instance, if you know Pokemon Go, then you can see the birds or the pictures when you put your device on the world. And in this case, we want to build an application where a character, an avatar, will show you the good behavior or the expected behavior. So the goal was for us to build these kinds of animations of good behavior in this augmented reality applications within the PBIS framework. And we wanted to build a curriculum of 12 lessons to do so. And the goal of this application was to support teachers in teaching behavioral lessons, support students in behavioral management and self-regulation skills. So we needed an expectation matrix, we call this. What are your school values? What are your school settings? And where do you put your behavioral expectations? And of course, we asked them, how do you reinforce the expected or desired behavior? We first did a literature review and did focus groups with experts and teachers. And then we sent out a questionnaire throughout Europe, through all schools. And we asked them, what are your values and behavior expectations for good behavior in a way? So this is the matrix we drafted for based on the literature. So you can see here on the left side of the matrix, you can see all the settings where we want the children to have good behavior or expected behavior. So the arrival, departure in the school, the corridors, the breaks and the lunches, the playground, the restrooms, and of course the classroom. And you see in the columns on the right side, you can see the values and expectations within the matrix. So the most chosen values are respect, responsibility, and safety. And you can see underneath per where it concerns to, whether it's yourself, so your own person as a student, other students, your peers, or the property or the environment, you can see in color coding what the behavioral expectation is. So for instance, if you want children to be respectful for yourself in the setting arrival, departure in the school, you use your speaking voice. So that's the behavioral expectations which belongs to respect. And if you want to be respectful for others, so the green color, for setting arrival, departure, you greet others. And you keep your hands and feet to yourself and keep the door open for others. So these are all behavioral expectations belonging to values which we want to train within the behavior of the students. But first, you need to model them as a teacher. And that's why we chose to develop augmented reality, where the character, so the avatar, will show the modeled behavior. I hope I am clear in this, because this is a very, the premise of this is that you use values and behavioral expectations in order to install the good behavior of the children. So this is what we distilled from the literature, that these are the behavioral expectations belonging to the values, so respect, responsibility, and safety, per setting. So for the classroom, it is for yourself, bring your own materials to school. So that's a behavioral expectation. But of course, this is a very, very big matrix, and it's already a short list. So we needed to slim it down to 12 lessons. And what we did was that we did a survey this year. We're still collecting, by the way. Participating countries are Italy, Lithuania, the Netherlands, and Portugal. And we had a total sample of 344 responses, which came from 135 teachers and 209 students. We still have data coming in. And we wanted to know how important are these school values in your school, which are chosen or used, and did we miss anything in this matrix? So these are the descriptive statistics and the ranking for the school values gouged over all the countries. So you can see from a ranking from 1 to 5 that they think, of course, they are important. These are the values which are most important. So respect, responsibility, and safety. And they're all important. So you can see that for teachers and students both, they are chosen respect, responsibility, and safety to be the most important values for the schools. For the countries, we got the data in. And these are the behavioral expectations. So you can also see here per behavioral expectations they chose. So walk with a goal, keep doors open for others, greet others, throw trash in the bin, wash with soap and dry your hands, which especially now is very important. Sit while you eat and drink, also very important. Keep your hands and feet to yourself. Use stop, walk, talk to solve problems. Keep your working space organized, store your belongings, let others be or let others play, help others with questions, stand up for others, work independently at your desk, and flush the toilet after your visit. So you can see the overall ranking, and these are the behavioral expectations which are the most important. These are the expectations which are chosen to be the most important, as well for students as well as teachers. And then these are the final ranked behavior expectations. So the first one, you can see it: throw trash in the bin, flush the toilet, stand up for others, and so on. So the final ranking of the behavior expectations matrix. So we slimmed down the matrix to 15 behavior expectations belonging to all these values. And I think, you know, as well as we do here in Europe, these are very important behavior expectations for children to learn. And if you cannot manage these kinds of behavior expectation, it's difficult or to regulate your behavior in the classroom. Then we shortlisted the behavior expectations and the order within the lesson series. So these are the final behavioral lessons we are going to develop for all settings. So greet others, keep your hands and feet to yourself, and walk with a goal. For all settings, these 3 behavior expectations are valid. And for classroom settings, we chose the other 3: keep your working space organized, store your belongings, and work independently at your desk. And then the more complex behavior expectations are in the other lessons for the lesson series. So stand up for others, and then 3 lessons for you: stop, walk, talk. If you have a problem, then help others with questions, and let others be or let others play. So based on the literature, based on the data from the questionnaire, we slimmed down the bigger behavioral matrix to these behavior expectations, which are the most important for students and teachers to practice expected behavior. I'm not sure about time. I think I'm good at time-wise.
You're fine. Yeah, we still have plenty of time. Just go ahead.
Okay, plenty of time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to the part of the AR, so in teaching and learning, within this behavioral framework. So what is augmented reality? I'm sure you've all played Pokemon Go. It was a big hit around the world. I don't see it played very often now. So basically, it is digital information which are overlays on top of the physical world to create an interactive space where users can explore, discover, interact, and learn. So here you can see that this is a simple example that you can put the chair in the room and you can see how the chair is in the room. And it's accessible for a variety of devices. So of course, traditional computers like this one, or a laptop, tablets and mobile phones, and increasingly wearable devices such as the Microsoft HoloLens and Google Glass. So you can see on the left side a person who is using the Microsoft HoloLens. But of course, in schools, this is not very accessible. It's very expensive and the products are very fragile. So for students to learn like this in classroom, it's not very accessible to do so. So that's why we chose to do this on a tablet or a mobile phone. So the technology nowadays is robust enough to create this space where to live a learning experience using specific software. And within the project, we are developing these software applications. Of course, with all technology, it should complement the learning rather than replace the traditional learning. So it needs to be an add-on towards the goal you want to achieve. And it occurs within the interaction of the content itself. So where you build the AR input, in this case, in this project, the behavioral animations, as well as using the AR application itself. So we know from the literature also that using these kinds of interventions, like augmented reality, is a good way to promote and support social skills, and also with children who have special needs, for instance, autism or an anxiety disorder. So we know that if you use these kinds of technologies, it will help learning and support social skills. So these are the characters we developed, and it's still in the beta version. So we want to know whether these kinds of AR input, so the use of augmented reality for the first time in behavior. So we do not know at this time how you can use this augmented reality to teach expected behavior. You can, of course, put a chair in the room, you can order a dress and then you can wear it and you can see how it goes around your body, or you can, of course, do something in architecture, or you can do, you have also AR applications for phobia. So if you have a spider phobia, you can use an AR application. So in healthcare it's used, but not so much to promote social behavior. So we wanted to learn whether AR can promote the learning of behavioral expectations I just showed you. So we slimmed down the matrix towards these 12 expectations. How could we promote social learning in this way? And then we did a pilot to test this teaching scenario in which AR is embedded. So we're just starting to do so because it takes a long time to build the AR and to have the input for the animations. So we know that these kinds of aids as behavioral management strategies can be applied within the PBS framework. And we use markers around the environment to position the augmented reality objects. So for instance, when you have a device, you have to calibrate the device towards the environment. And within the environment, there is a marker or an object that triggers the device, the software in the device. So for instance, a QR code or an object or something like this. And then we use the premise of video modeling to show the child the good behavior. So how do you perform or model the behavior? So the character we chose is an alien. So the alien shows the child the good behavior. And the participant is expected to learn by observing the animation. So in former intervention, we use an instructional video to show the behavioral modeling. But in this case, we use an animation within the AR, which is overlaid into the real world. Why did we choose this modeling intervention? And because from the literature, we also know this is a good teaching practice to do so with students who have emotional behavioral disorders. And also we know from the literature, when you do so, it's very immersive, so it affects the behavior of children. And again, this is what we said, we teach and acknowledge positive behavioral expectations, and they are defined, modeled, and practiced and reinforced. So you catch them while they're good. So you give them positive feedback and reinforce them when they show the good behavior. So here again in a picture, you have this learning space in a real setting enriched with augmented reality to model, practice, and reinforce the defined behavioral expectations. Model, practice, reinforce each time. So the behavioral lesson concerns, of course, the teacher explaining what kind of expected behavior is wanted for the children to do so. Then you model it again with the AR, you practice it and reinforce it, and within all settings. And then, of course, you have the AR behavioral content to do so.
2 more minutes, Prof.
Yes?
2 more minutes, please.
2 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So we built an authoring tool, which is called Mirage XR for mobile devices, and teachers can create their own content to do so. And when they create their content, they have a repository that collects all these learning resources, and within these expectations and AR content, they can teach it within the app. So the alien, which is called RPro, is the coach for the students and will show how to perform the expected behavior in the classroom in all the different settings. So these are the partners who have built the Mirage XR authoring tool. And here you can see hopefully we chose the behavioral expectations. So we are just in the beginning stages. I hope it shows the beginning stages of designing the behavioral contents. So the teacher can design this and model the behavioral expectation. So you can see here the character, which is RPro, and this is the expected behavior you want. It's very complex to program this, and in a way we want teachers to do so via the authoring tool. And here you have the other one. And then the character, so RPro, the alien, greets the pupil. Goes again. And in each setting, you can put these characters in for the model behavior and the behavior you don't want to see. Okay. How can the teacher do this? This is the Mirage XR tool. So how can you do this as a teacher? You calibrate first on the marker, and then you can, this is the marker, and then the teacher can program the behavioral content. You choose a character. For instance, these are all the characters you can put in. You put in a child, for instance, and so in this way you can make a behavioral content based on the templates we have designed. And then you can use this in your lessons to model the right behavior. So now he chooses the alien. And in this way, you can build an AR content for behavioral content in your school. Of course, this is still very simple. We need some 2 years more to build this, but we're already testing this in the classroom where the children like it and teachers can use it. Okay, because we have 2 more minutes. Okay. So in this way, I wanted to show you this exciting project where we build these kinds of behavioral animations in creating a positive school climate. Well, it's dark here indeed, and it's raining and it's cold. So we want to reinforce the good behavior of the children by building these kinds of animation where teachers can use characters to show the good behavior to children. So thank you for your attention. If you want more information, you can also email me if you want to. And it's a very exciting project, and I hope to show you more later. And maybe next year when we have done the pilot and built the AR, and maybe for schools to use. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Gui. Thank you. That's a very insightful presentation about a big project that you have. Maybe I need just to summarize some of the most important that I can get from the presentation. So this is a big project, and one part of the project here is about this is about behavior, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is about the, I just missed my, this is about education management in the era of COVID-19 pandemic, and Professor Gui have a very big project, and just one small part of the project has been presented today. So this is to do with the behavior. So this is about what is called as positive behavior, yeah?
Yeah.
Expected behavior. Your expected behavior. Yeah, we are now at the new era, and probably one of the big challenges for the student now is to do with their behavior, with their expected behavior. The presence of the teacher and the direct interaction between teacher and students probably will give an impact on the building of the expected behavior. But with the pandemic, there should be a very well-planned kind of expected behavior development. And according to Prof. Gui here, that the school need to provide support for the behavior, so the positive behavior support, and also to create environment. And the environment should be guided by the curriculum, and there should be some kind of coaching to the teacher, and also a system should be built. It's very interesting that in this project, it's really, I think it's a bottom up, is that right? Because the behavior, the expected behavior and the expected behavior matrix are collected. And then that formulated and grouped and then are ranked, I mean.
Yes,
so you have you collect the expected behavior from the bottom. It's really bottom up, and then you classify that. You order that according to the most important, and then you develop the system. So this is probably everybody need this in every country, especially what I imagine with Indonesia, that we have very major problem with developing the expected behavior among children, because we struggle with the teaching, the teaching of the curriculum nowadays, and really not too much attention on behavior, and this is really inspiring. The research is really inspiring. Do you have any publications so far about this?
Not yet. We're still we're going to publish a book chapter on the behavior expectations, but we are in the middle of setting up the pilot for the behavioral lessons with the AR. But yeah, we are in lockdown again, so we cannot do it. Yeah.
Wow, we are looking forward. I myself looking forward to reading your book chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Prof. Vina.
Oh yeah, I know her very well as well. Okay, I invite now audience, if you have any questions. If I check from the chat box, well,
if you have any questions, please do.
Yeah,
so.
any questions? Can I start with a question?
Sure.
Well, this is about the expected behavior that you collected from, actually from teachers, is that right? From students. Oh, from teachers and students.
Yes.
And they just, is it an open kind of, some kind of questionnaire that have to write down the expected behavior, or do you have a list of expected behavior that you put the number that will show which one is the most important? And then what about the culture? I mean, when the student coming from different culture, do you think they have a different choice to put the order of importance?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for this. Yes, we did both. So we showed them a list of expectations, and they can rank them by giving them a number from 1 to 5. And 5 is the most important. And then we asked them, did we miss anything? Did we miss any behavior expectations? So they could write down in their own language what the behavior expectation would be. So we're still analyzing those data because we have to translate it. It's in Italian and in Lithuanian and English, and we have Portuguese. So, and indeed, it is a big question. Behavior across cultures is not the same. So the things you expect from pupils to behave good is different than how we in the Netherlands think what is good behavior. So we need to take this into account. So that's why we chose to do an AR application where the teacher themselves can build the animation.
And the application for the animation is also the things that you create from this project.
Yes, but we're still building it, and it's very complex. I'm not an engineer, so.
But many people are looking forward to, to use your application. Is it going to be free of charge?
Yes.
Or free application?
It's
very good.
publicly funded, so I hope it's going to be available in 1 or 2 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, any questions, ladies and gentlemen? It's so silent.
Yes, very silent. You already had a big program, didn't you?
Yes. Anyway, it seems that there is no questions. Well, if there is no questions, I think we have to end this. So we, from the committee, really have to say thank you so much to all the keynote speakers for all the inspiring talk. We learned so much from these sessions. And thank you so much, especially to you, Prof. Gui, for very inspiring. Yeah, this is an area of research actually also in Indonesia. And Ms. Fina is also involved in this project, is that right?
Not yet, but if she wants to.
Okay. Yeah, okay, if there is no question, I think I have to end. So I give this back to the MC, but before that, please join me to give the round of applause for all our great presenters in this session. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, I give it back to the master of ceremony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the moderator. And once again, thank you for all the keynote speakers. Please kindly remain in the room for the certificate of appreciation. For the operator, would you present the first certificate for Professor Dr. Haji Swaidi, MA, PhD? And then for Professor Dr. Sui Lin Gui from Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, Netherlands. Thank you. Next, for Professor Yaoi Kodama, PhD, from the University of Kitakyushu, Japan. Next, for Dr. Nina Hood, founder of Education Hub, New Zealand. Thank you for the operator. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the opening ceremony. I'm thankful to all guests and participants, and we are looking forward to see you again in the consortium meeting, which will be started tomorrow at 9 a.m. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi 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 Om.